Well, today we are here with our special guest, Clarissa Vasquez, to discuss networking tips and working in the hospitality industry. We'd like to welcome you to our video interview series, which we're kind of calling Stirring Up Success, Career Stories and Advice for Christian College Students and Graduates. I am Jake Dobrins.
And I am Tyler Clark, Jake's co-host. We are with Chef, the Christian Higher Education Foundation. Now, the Christian College Alumni Network feeds into the Chef mission of increasing access to Christian higher education by merging and activating alumni networks of Christian colleges, thereby drawing in more high school students to Christian schools.
And as a delicious perk of being a member in our network, we're going to learn more about Clarissa today and what she teaches us about the hospitality industry and also making the most of our first job after college. She's just going to give us some awesome career advice today. So, without further ado, why don't we get cooking?
Hello, Clarissa. We so appreciate you joining us here in the kitchen today with Chef. How you been? We're glad to have you.
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this. And I think what you guys are doing is really awesome. So I'm always happy to share what I know, good, bad, indifferent. And, everybody should have their own recipe on how to make it better. And it's really about who you are and being true to who you are and what you like. Some people like it a little saltier than others. Other people like it a little sweeter. So it's putting your own spin on life and what you do that will make you successful.
Ain't that the truth?
Yes, and we're going to double your pay. Thanks for adding the kind of chef imagery in there.
I wasn't ready for that. It just kind of came out.
Well,
so there you go. Kind of like a recipe.
No, I love it.
That you don't have. One lack thereof. Who has time for recipes?
There you go. So let's kind of start with the basics. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, your family, educational background, some of the jobs you've done. Give us the history.
All right, sure. I'd love to do that. So I was raised in San Antonio, Texas, and went to school there. I went to TMI, Texas Military Institute, private school. I graduated from there, played tennis all through high school, very active in school, and always been a leader without really knowing you're a leader, one of those kind of things. I was always in student council. I was the editor of my yearbook, did the whole homecoming thing. Again, sometimes we're just natural born leaders and don't really realize what we're doing until we end up, kind of growing up and kind of figuring out what we like and what we don't like, and seeing that sometimes people just kind of end up following, and it's a great thing, right? Good and bad. So right there, went to Austin College in Sherman, Texas. I got a degree in Spanish and organizational communications from Austin College. Graduated, went back to San Antonio, started working with the World Trade Center in San Antonio, which is really when I found myself. And I want to say that because even though I was really active in high school and I had a lot of friends and I'd known them for many, many years, a small school, kind of like Brentwood, it was, they were like my brothers. You kind of grow up with them. You don't really realize the talents that you possibly have because everybody just knows you. So when I got to the World Trade Center, I played tennis in high school. I was in a sorority, but I didn't really take on any leadership type roles. I was just there to do school and have fun, right? Play some tennis and meet some people. Again, it still wasn't totally developed. My last semester of college, I did an internship with the World Trade Center. Well, the interesting thing is that back then, before computers and internet and all of that, and kind of go to the long story so you can kind of see how I've developed as a person as well. Again, I was a Spanish and organizational communications major. Well, the World Trade Center doesn't really do anything about that, right? If you think I'm going to work for a World Trade Center, you want to think marketing or international business or international languages or whatever. Well, that wasn't me. That's not what I majored in, right? I had very liberal arts. So I needed a sponsor to sponsor my internship. And I got the internship from the World Trade Center because, again, through networking, without thinking that that's what it was called back then, a friend's brother-in-law knew the director that was there, and he was like, yeah, come on over, let's get you in. So that's kind of how that worked. So when I went to my professor, or the international business professor, I'll never forget, Shelley Williams. He was the demigod of Austin College, and everybody thought, he thought he was all that in a bag of chips. Well, I went to him and I said, hey, I need a sponsor. And he basically looked at me and said, you know what? As small as the school was, he didn't really know me. I didn't really know him. And he said, you know what? Your degree is worth about 60 cents at the cup of coffee at Woody's, which was the local dime, grocery store. Okay, well, I'm about to graduate. That's not something I need to be hearing, especially because I'm paying all this money for an education that I'm thinking I'm going to be able to do something with. So that kind of caught me off guard. I was a little upset, but as Tyler will tell you, I'm a little spicy. So I turned around and I looked at him and I said, look, I'm not asking you what my degree's worth. I'm asking you for a signature. Can you do that or not? Because if you're not going to do that, I will go another route. Because I knew this is what I wanted to do and what I needed to do. So under the grumbling and, not really wanting to, because I didn't fit his mold and I was an international business major. I didn't have the money to go abroad, so I never did that, which he was a big, wanted everybody to do that. He signed my paper. So I said, okay, great. Then he said, maybe you've thought about going to Thunderbird or go to graduate school because, I don't think you can make it doing international business at a World Trade Center because you don't know anything. And I was like, all right, well, we'll talk about that. So I leave with a signature, not feeling great, but feeling like, okay, I got something, don't really know, or doubting my talents, not sure of, is this something I can really do or not, right? Because he just told me that I'm not going to do anything with my degree and I've wasted all my time and my money and I have no support. So I guess, I don't know, a couple of days past, whatever, I go to the school, I guess the counselor, right? The academic, college counselor kind of person. I forget what they're called nowadays. I go in and I said, you know what? I was talking to Shelley Williams and he suggested possibly going to graduate school. Well, back then, again, we didn't have internet. So we had these big, huge books that were probably like 8 inches that probably smelled, I remember they smelled really bad. They probably weren't updated. Who knows how old they were. And I said, I need to get into, I need an MBA. I need graduate school. And she's like, okay, well, what's your GPA? What's this? What's that? And I was like, I don't know, maybe a 3.2. I don't know. Well, you'll need to take a GRE. Well, that already was like, okay, that's not going to happen. And I said, well, is there a school? Is there a school that I can apply to that I could possibly, you guys can help me with, or we can work towards that because I didn't know what I was going to do. So she's like, I'm not sure. That's not a really good GPA. Again, very negative. And the spicy person that I am again, I turned around and I said, well, you know what? I know schools have quotas and I'm a minority and I'm sure there's one out there that I can fit into and I can meet. So you're either going to help me with this or you're not. Well, I'm not sure that she liked that too much because I walked out and I didn't go to graduate school. Went to the World Trade Center, and that's when I really became who I am today. Already knowing that as I skip through some of these questions probably, but I think it's really important for people to understand that even though you were told no so many times, it's okay. Kind of like in sales, right? You got to get through 10 before you can get the 1 or whatever it is. It's just even a professor that you is highly respected in a university, or your parents, or somebody that you see, even if they say you can't, if you are determined to do it, you can do it. It's just finding the way. I tell my kids all the time, the hardest thing to come up with is the idea. Once you have the idea, your brain will figure out how to work it, how to figure it out. Know what you want to do and be true to yourself. And that's what I did. So I get to the World Trade Center, and back then our internships were non-paid. And I started in January of 1992. Going and working 40 hours a week, taking classes through correspondence because I still had my last semester, right? For 0 pay, working 8 to 5, right? All day, every day. And I still had responsibilities. I still, had a lot of things to do. Well, that's where I learned how to network. And I say that because even though I was so involved in high school and again in college, I was still pretty shy. I know that people think that's hard to believe, but I wasn't going to be the person that would walk up to somebody and just start talking to them. And because, well, what do you talk about? I remember going, and I knew all these people, and I remember names and faces, and I would go to cotillion balls, and I would see people that I had gone to school with, and I'd come home and I'd be like, oh, Mom, I saw so-and-so. She's like, well, did you say hi? And I always said no. She's like, why not? I'm like, oh, they're not going to remember me. So, that was that. And so that wasn't who I was. At the World Trade Center, I was forced to do marketing. I was forced to do matchmaking. Delegations that would come from all over the world, whether it was Mexico or Japan or other countries. This was right in the middle of NAFTA. I was right in the middle of all that. Word got signed. I did the whole thing. I worked with the City of San Antonio Economic Development Center, all the chambers of commerce. I really started being able to figure out that I could talk to people and not have to be scared. And so that kind of just took off. During that time, the person from the World Trade Center owned a hotel. He owned the Gunner there in San Antonio, the Sheraton Gunner. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be cool to work at a hotel and maybe possibly live there? That was the end of that. In and out. Again, you don't have internet. I wouldn't have known the first thing to do to try to get into that career field. No clue. My mom said something about Cornell or somewhere, and I thought, I have no idea where that is, and it's probably cold, and I'm not going because I don't like the cold. So that, again, and I say that because sometimes, fear is the only thing that prevents us from moving forward, right? The only thing to fear is fear itself.
Right.
So I didn't go abroad. I say because I didn't have money, but honestly, if I dig deep, I can tell you I was probably pretty scared. I'd be scared to go abroad because I'm not going to know anybody. I may not even know the language. And then what if I get lost? And there are all these things that kept me from doing the things because either a professor, somebody, or just myself. So sometimes I think that we end up not doing things or taking those chances because we are scared. So went through that, got married, all that kind of stuff, had kiddos, went from the World Trade Center, worked there for 1.5 years, actually, for free. But I learned a lot about just life in general. From there, I was recruited by an independent insurance agency. And already, I'm feeling more confident because I didn't have to look for a job. They came and looked for me. That was a great and crazy, horrible experience because my boss was crazy. He would get on tables and yell and scream and make everybody cry and all of that. It was horrible. One thing I did learn from him was, he would stand up there and literally yell and scream on these cubicles and say, when you have a voicemail message, when are you supposed to call him back? And we'd all, silently quiet and saying, oh, I don't know, within 24 hours, within 5 minutes, within an hour, within 15 minutes. And he'd yell at all of us and say, no, we should never have voicemail messages. The phone should always be answered. So I was like, okay, well, that's that, right? Very high customer service, a very high focus, very much that. Okay, well, learn from those experiences and so many others I could tell you about, but we don't have time for that. So then from there, I got recruited by the Hartford to run a call center for them as an independent agent. Because back then, insurance companies weren't direct writers. You had to have an independent agent. And because the company, the Hartford, didn't know how to work with agents, and I had the experience, I was going to help them create these teams and run their departments. There I had 2 really, really good mentors. And that's where I learned how to be a leader. My confidence was good. Or better because I'd had the experience at the World Trade Center. I was being recruited. I didn't have to interview. People wanted me. And I thought, this is pretty cool. This is a good feeling. And you know what? Shelly Williams, you don't know anything. And if I could see him again, and I would say this all the time, I'd show you. So sometimes that is enough motivation to say, I'll show you. You don't think I can do it? Guess what? I'm making more than 50 cents a cup of coffee. So
there you
got
go.
to the Hartford, right? So got to the Hartford very young. I was probably 22, 23, and was there super early in the morning. My husband and I shared a vehicle. So it was, there were struggles. He would drop me off early or I would drop him off early and he'd pick me up at 8. We were there all the time. But what I learned from that is a couple things. One, I was a very young supervisor, very young manager. I went up the ranks very quickly, but I was also a little cocky. I got to that other point, right? Because here, I think I know everything now, right? I'm the youngest manager, and I had really good mentors that taught me how to be a leader, and started, molding me and teaching me things. From there, my husband decided we needed to move to Austin. I was like, well, what are we doing? Well, I was going to just telecommute. And he's like, no, the company is actually going to, back then, they would relocate you, and they would also, write your resume and find you a job and yada, 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 yada.
Nice.
So here I'm super pregnant with Nina, my youngest, and I'm coming to interview. They wanted me to run the billing center at Farmers Insurance here in Austin. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure I can do this. I was going to work for the Hartford, driving to San Antonio, which was not realistic. And my husband turns to me as I'm driving. I can even tell you what I was wearing. I remember it so clearly. And he says, and they had told me this at the Hartford. Joe Manny, my mentors, always said, oh, that was another question he would ask me early in the morning when I would sit with him. He'd be like, Clarissa, what do you manage? And I said, well, I manage this department. I manage this. I manage endorsements. I manage all the tasks. He's like, nope, that's not right. And I was like, okay, I don't know. What am I missing? What am I supposed to manage? He says, you manage the people and they will manage the work. So again, that started developing. So as we're driving to Austin, I turned to my husband, I'm like, I don't billing. I can't even balance my checkbook. Are you kidding me? I hate math. I don't know numbers. And you want me to be able to talk about accounting and billing? There's no way. And he turns to me as we're driving and he says, you can manage widgets. Remember, you manage people. You're not managing the widgets. Doesn't matter what the items are. If you manage the people and they're loyal to you and you win them over, they're going to do whatever you want, however you want. That's what you need to remember. And I was like, all right, well, got the job. Get the job. Still kind of kicking and screaming because my babies were little. I mean, Charlie was probably a year and a half. Nina was just being born. Itty bitty. We didn't have anybody in Austin. And my husband was working, and now you got the daycare thing and you're moving them and you're working 40 hours and you're young. And we were like, we got to push before we start kids. And, so I was already pretty high up there. So manage this billing center again, really nervous because I don't do billing and I walk in and they're on green screens. Oh my gosh. Here, I thought I was all that bad because I could use a mouse. So, and I was using fancy, PCs. So I just kept telling myself every day, manage the people. And that's what made me successful there. Well, everything happens by accident, but not, I really believe that people are put in our paths for a reason. God doesn't do things by accident. Each one of our lives is a puzzle, and it's all on God's time, right? When it is time, God will put that additional piece in our puzzle when it's the right time and not a moment sooner. So I called, the kids were in daycare. We were working, bazillion hours. They were in daycare full time. I happened to call one summer and I said, hey, we're not going to be able to do computer classes. He was 2 or however old, right? We're not going to do them in the summer. We're going to be gone. I don't know, whatever. We're going to take them out. So the lady, the teacher said, well, actually, I might not be doing it. I'm going to sell the business, yada, yada. So I said, oh. So again, got my husband and I thinking, well, why couldn't I run that business? Why couldn't I do that? So I'll fast forward to I end up leaving Farmers Insurance. And again, remember that negative talk that not only we have ourselves, but that other people will tell us. I had just gotten some awards from Farmers Insurance. Corporate had just been there. We had just been in a luncheon. I walk in to give my notice to my boss. And I said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'd made her very successful. She had a great department. Everything was going smoothly. She was set up for success. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have to head out and do something else. And I told her I was starting a business. I was going to take over these computer classes. I was going to teach, or I was going to have a business. And she turned around. She, turned around in her chair, got on her desk, and she says, and how do you know you're going to be successful? It's a brand new thing. You don't know you're going to be able to do it. And then what? You're going to come back? You think your job's going to be here again or whatever? Blah, 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 blah. And all I did was I looked at her and I said, you know what? If I can make you successful, do you not think that I'm going to work 10 times more and harder to make sure that I'm successful? Well, absolutely. And that's what I'm going to do. So she didn't talk to me for many, many years. She ended up leaving, starting her own business. But again, the story's about me. So I go off, I start this business, and I started with teaching computer classes to preschool age children ages 2 to 12. And the reason I tell you this whole long story is because, again, it's all in God's time and you never know. The most important things I learned was networking, marketing, and I'm still not networking that much at this point, right? I'm still in my circle. My kids are little. I'm meeting parents from daycare. Everybody's going crazy. So there's not really a lot of that going on. I'm not playing tennis, so I'm not real happy, but I miss it, that kind of thing. Well, as I started teaching classes, again, I was like, you know what? I'm pretty good at this, and I'm going to revamp the program that I bought because I know they're missing this, this, and this. So I came up with my own structure. And I'm not even going to go into all that, but I made my own structure, and I started building those relationships with the teachers, because who's going to send the students? Who's going to tell the parents? Who touches those, right? The teachers in those classrooms. So they were like, oh, you need to sign up. Miss Clarissa's really great. You need to sign up. You need to sign up. Then I made an incentive for those teachers. And then I talked to the directors, and then I would bring them donuts. And it was building that network. And then, oh, by the way, it's a stepping stone, which I'm sure being from Austin, you would know that. There's a bunch of them. So once I got into one, it was real easy for another director to call another director and say, hey, you need Clarissa here. You need Clarissa here. You need. So in less than 6 months, I had all the stepping stones in the Austin area, and I needed help and I needed teachers. So I started hiring. Well, while I was doing that, because I would actually take the time to meet with people, and I was, and my kiddos were there with me, believe it or not, they'll tell you they did all those classes with me. Or after I drop them off at school, I built those relationships with the parents, because guess what? Those parents are the ones that are writing the checks. So I started, the owners and the directors would come to me and say, well, can you bring us more classes? And I was like, okay, well, what do you want? What other classes do you want? I already have a market. Now I'm just going to capitalize on it. And they said, well, how about Spanish? And I was like, oh my gosh, I speak Spanish all the time. That's not very fun. How about something else? And they said cheerleading. And I was like, that's not even a real sport. I don't even do cheerleading. But they said, that's what we want. So I said, all right, I'll go ahead and I'll do cheerleading for you. I came up, all I did was duplicate the little machine that I had with the computer classes, and I created the same thing, the same program, the same lesson plans, the progress reports, everything that I was doing, just on a cheerleading side. And on the cheerleading side, I did it, because I don't do anything, halfway. I did real uniforms from real cheerleading companies, from real pom-pom manufacturers. I wasn't doing a Hobby Lobby thing, and I was, it was great. Well, a few months into that, they came back and said, no, we really want Spanish. We don't like our Spanish person that's here, that's already teaching. We want to kick her out. We want you to do all of our programs. So now, again, little Johnny is taking computer classes. The sister, Jane, is taking cheerleading, and then they're both also taking Spanish. So I capitalized on that networking again, as we talk about, right? It was making sure that people knew I was there, being honest, and having those conversations, finding things in common, showing that I cared, being empathetic, in the sense of, if you missed a class, it's okay. I'm a mom. I get it. I'm not going to charge you that $20. Let's just save it for another class. So it's building that loyalty with that group. Well, as I built that loyalty, I had a parent that came to me, and I had teachers and all that. I was running all the courtyards. I was running all the La Petites. I was running stuff. I blew it up. We really blew it up. But as we were doing cheerleading, as I got to know all the parents, they came to me. One parent came to me and said, hey, you know what? My daughter does cheerleading at this youth organization. Would you do our uniforms? And I was like, okay. I knew nothing about shoes. I didn't know anything about bows. Nothing. So again, not being afraid to take a chance on something, even if it was going to take me a few extra nights to learn something, right? Or to maybe it was going to maybe cost me money, because I would go crazy, because I was like, oh my God, I just ordered that uniform, and I ordered this wrong and the wrong size, and now I can't return it. So now it's costing me money. But you know what? Again, what my husband said was, you paid for school, you paid for college, you were paying for an education. You had to pay for that. You were paying to learn this new business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. While we're waiting for Clarissa's internet to catch up with all of the great wisdom she's thrown at us, I just wanted to boil down some of the salient points that she shared with us about networking and the hospitality industry. Know your worth. Sounds like she knew that from a very early age, and she kind of learned as that went. And even if your degree isn't necessarily in the work that you wanted to get into, um, you still have learned a basic foundational skill set, and look at where you want to go. Look at the skills and experience that requires, and then you can show how your major applies to that job. Clarissa also did a phenomenal job learning from really difficult people, and that helped her um, get great value from crummy situations and even maybe not care as much about what people think, which made her a more valuable asset in the hospitality industry. And doing your research is an important part of networking, like she did with this most recent job that she got. Because she knew who the director was, she got that foot in the door, which was really important.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think of a lot of what we see in the biblical story where God kind of prepares people in unlikely ways. Like we have Moses is the perfect person for the guy to talk to Pharaoh. He was raised in Pharaoh's house. He speaks the language. He knows the customs. And I saw a lot of that in Clarissa's story, exactly what you mentioned. Leveraging those skill sets is really important. And I also loved how she noticed problems and then learned how to fix them. It wasn't just, she didn't have to, I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what to do there. No, she saw the issue and said, I could learn that. And I appreciate that commitment to, I can learn that. Even if I don't know it now, I can get there. And that's just, that's great quality to have for any job searcher. Thanks so much for watching and listening, everybody. Be sure to check back in with that LinkedIn group for more great interviews on stirring up success and a bunch of other awesome resources.